the least threatening thing.
Yeah, I don't know. And Lord knows why people do what they do, especially me.
Just got to find that right actor.
Yeah.
For the movie rights. We are live streaming now. You might have seen that pop up on your screen. Hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. Welcome. This is Veterans Breakfast Club for Monday, October 25th. We're going to be getting started here in a few minutes. Tonight, we have a very exciting guest. Ed Eaton is joining us to tell us about his story and the book that he wrote, Mekong Delta, Mekong Mud Dogs. I'm sorry. You don't want to miss this one. There's some incredible stories to come here in the next 90 minutes.
Ed, is there any chance of getting Mike Perkins on at some point, like down the road, you two together?
Oh boy, he's clear down in Utah, south of Salt Lake City, but he's a really busy guy. Does a lot of Boy Scout stuff, and he's just a real busy man. I can't speak for him on that. Okay. I couldn't tell you. Yeah.
Okay. I might ask him if eventually come back. I'd love to hear his version and his story of the Medal of Honor petition.
Yeah, I think he's pretty tired of it, about like I am, but
yeah,
what can we say?
Yeah.
Not so much the story, just the whole ordeal. But...
Well, that's exhaust you until you give it up.
Yeah. I tell you, they are dealing with the Army is something else deal. They basically decided that they made up a new ruling that you can only be upgraded once.
So you can't skip two, in other words, from a bronze to a Medal of Honor. They could.
Yeah, and even though there has been new evidence and new, so I don't know. It is what it is. I just don't pay attention to it anymore. Supposedly my congressman is still fiddling with it. But,
right.
Yeah. He doesn't let me know what he's doing, so it is what it is.
Right.
All right. I will start the theme music and start letting people in.
Sounds good. Let's do it. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Veterans Breakfast Club Happy Hour for Monday, October 25th. My name is Sean Hall. I'm the Director of Programming here with the VBC. Starting the program tonight to host. I'm going to be taking the hosting duties for the next 90 minutes. And wingman tonight will be Todd DiPastino, the Executive Director of the VBC. Todd, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well enough to be wingman. Thank you for allowing me to accompany you here on this interesting conversation tonight.
Of course, and I'm loving the jack-o'-lantern you have here. It's a nice Halloween theme here. Ellie, also with us, our media producer, always in the background, making us all look good. Ellie, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. And thank you all for being here. We have a very interesting program for you this evening. We're going to talk with Anthony Stowe. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, about the Military Arts Festival happening here in Pittsburgh. And then we will talk with Ed Eaton, joining us to talk about his tour in Vietnam and his story and his book, Mekong Mud Dogs. We were just talking right before entering the program that we very well could fill an entire 90 minutes off one day in his service. We might start a little bit earlier than that day, but I'm sure we will definitely get to that. We have a lot of things to get to with Ed, in fact. So to kick things off real quick, though, Todd, I'm going to hand it to you. I know you have an announcement or two, and we'll also talk about what's coming up tomorrow night.
Yes, and I have a mea culpa and then an announcement about tomorrow night. The mea culpa is I'm very sorry to all of you last week who came on Thursday night expecting to listen to and talk with Carl Marlantes and John McClane, two Vietnam Marines who wrote wonderful memoirs and a novel about their experience in Vietnam, acclaimed, famous writers. They didn't show. And that's, I think we just didn't work hard enough to confirm them. And so I apologize for that. We also, we had another writer not show up. And so I just want to let you know, we're not doing false advertising. We're not deliberately leading you down, doing the bait and switch, getting you here, then switching. So I am very grateful that Ed Eaton is here, and he will be sharing his story. And then the other thing I want to announce is we have a really interesting program tomorrow night with Greatest Generation Live. We have he's going to show, I know he is, because I corresponded with him today. We have New York Times best-selling writer, author, Daniel James Brown, who's written a new book about the 4 Japanese American families during World War II, tracing their experiences through the internment camps, and also in the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the All-Nisei, or Japanese American unit that fought in Italy, France, and Germany during World War II. Daniel James Brown's book is Facing the Mountain, a true story of Japanese American heroes in World War II. And man, does it get rave reviews. And I haven't read it yet, but I'm very eager to have him on. He's a wonderful writer. I've certainly read enough of him to know that. And we're also having Tom Akeda on, who is the executive director of Densho, which is a Japanese word that means providing a legacy or memories for the rising generation. And Densho is a nonprofit that's dedicated to keeping alive the memories of those who served in those internment camps in World War II, Japanese American incarceration in World War II, keeping that story alive. And many of some people in those camps were plucked and sent into combat in Europe. So we're going to be talking about the Japanese American experience in World War II with 2 real experts on the subject. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Todd. And Ben's right. He just put into the chat, there was a great article today in the Post-Pittsburgh Trib about Julia Parsons. Julia, you're joining us tonight, as always. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Julia, for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, helped to decode Enigma as a Navy wave back in World War II. Thank you for the shout outs in your article, Julia, and thank you for always being here.
My pleasure. I hate to miss it.
Yeah. Well, and also Scuttlebutt. Scuttlebutt, which I normally host, just released a new episode on Monday. I interviewed Iraqi interpreter Ihab. You may know him from the VBC network. He has attended our in-person breakfasts. Very interesting story, very funny story about how he came to work for the Americans, and an incredible storyteller, I'll say that. So if you haven't checked it out, Ellie will put the link over here in the chat. You can go right to our website. You can go to our YouTube channel and check out the Scuttlebutt this week. We have 3 more episodes remaining for this current season. Next week, we'll be talking with an Afghan interpreter, following that up with JROTC from Pine Richland, and then finishing up with Gold Star wife Krista Anderson for this current season. But check out this week, Ihab, our wonderful conversation on our YouTube channel. I would love, Michael Wanham, I'd love to get George Takei to appear. That would be fantastic. We'll see what we can do. But without further ado, we'll get the program here started. And Anthony Stowe, thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about the Military Arts Festival here in Pittsburgh. When is that coming up, and what should people expect?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. It's going to be this Saturday, October 30th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Energy Innovation Center downtown. So the idea is to celebrate Veterans Day in an artistic way. So I myself come from a military family. My dad served over 20 years. I served over 11 years myself. I was an Army captain. So the idea was just to celebrate Veterans Day in a way where we can give veterans a more creative opportunity to showcase their artwork. So the event itself will feature 15 artists, veterans, family members, and advocates. And then we're also going to have 2 food trucks, Brisket Berg and By the Wayside Coffee, which I'm sure everyone here has seen at some point. And then, of course, we couldn't have done this without the support of so many different military organizations, VBC included. You guys jumped quickly on being able to put the word out, so it's fantastic. Highmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Ripid Energy Fuel, Pittsburgh Penguins, First National Bank, and just so many other organizations will be attending too. So if you would like to attend, it would be great to see everyone there. Tickets are $10 for general admission and free for kiddos 12 years old and younger. And I'll put the ticket link in our chat room here. So looking forward to see everyone there if you can make it.
Anthony, are you live streaming any portion of the Arts Festival?
So we're not, but on our event site itself, we're going to have links and websites to the artists themselves afterwards too.
And are you an artist?
So I myself am an actor in a different sense. So I've done a lot of commercial work in the area. So it's just been a really artistic way to just be able to, take the military uniform off in a different way.
Totally. And actually, for those who have been attending for a long time, know that I got my start in acting. So kindred spirit here, Anthony. How have you, and I've talked to a lot of veterans who became actors, which is a form of art. How do you use this art form? What did you learn from your time in service that you use in your art form?
Sure. So I think, stereotypically, everyone always thinks that veterans we're a one-stop shop, right? We can only go from our left to our right. There's no creative outlet from there. But it's the complete, it's totally false. Every single person is their own individual. And I take that into every single role that I get the opportunity to play. And I think we're seeing a lot of veterans getting that opportunity as well with some other organizations that have popped up in the nation. And of course, you've got really good actors like Adam Driver, who served in the Marines. So it's just been fun.
That's great. And is there, I had a couple actors on my podcast and asked them this, is there any movie that you would recommend that gets it right about a military story?
That gets it right. Oh man. So this is way too far beyond my personal knowledge, but I've always had a soft spot for Glory. I think Glory is a fantastic movie. I don't know what the historical accuracy is, of course, but
Todd's shaking his head, so it seems like the historical accuracy is there. Yeah.
It's one of my dad and I's favorite pastimes. Literally just growing up with the military. It's been my entire life since I got out in 2017.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
Anthony, thank you so much for being here. I hope you stick around for the whole program. Reminder to everybody that you are more than welcome to ask questions here in the chat, and we will fit them into the program as we go along. We don't necessarily have to wait until the very end for a Q&A. But taking that note from Anthony, this idea of military family and transitioning that over to our main guest tonight, Ed Eaton. Ed, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And sort of a really quick first question for you is, how did you find out about VBC? Because you reached out to us. Is that correct? Oh, you're muted. Ed, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Ed, I don't know if you can hear us, but we have you muted. I can ask you to unmute.
Is that better?
That's better.
All right.
Now we can hear you. Thank you so much, Ed, for joining us tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure. I don't know how I found you guys. I just remember that I did, and found your whole setup to be of interest. So,
well, it's great, and we're absolutely honored to have you here and a part of the program. This story is so big, it's going to be very difficult to fit this into 90 minutes. But like I said, sort of going back to the idea of military family, you start reading your book, Mekong Mud Dogs, and you quickly find out that you come from a military family. Your dad served.
correct. Right. Some of my earliest memories were on a Marine Corps base.
So
my father served World War II and Korea.
did he ever talk about it?
Oh yeah, not a whole lot. Not until after I got out of Vietnam did he really start talking about it. And of course, it was a whole different situation for him. He started off in Marine Corps Air, shot his own rudder off in the Battle of Midway. So they had to ditch that plane. But then he is in another aircraft later on that ditched. I found out later, but yeah, he wasn't too afraid to talk about it as long as it was around another veteran. I think that was the biggest thing.
And you find out in reading the book, just sort of an overview of your dad is that he eventually becomes a mortician. Is that right?
Correct.
And coupling this with sort of your early years, you not only worked with him in that setting, but you did a lot of different jobs growing up.
Yeah, I realized we didn't have much money, and I just realized, that my education was going to have to be experience. So I might work for one farmer all summer, but I'd probably maybe do 5 different jobs for him. And if he couldn't find me a different job, I'd go find a different farmer. But that's just kind of the way I was back then, and I'm glad I did now. So, but yeah, Dad got put into a situation where he was body bagging Marines, and he realized that he was able to take that a little better than the average guy. So he was very much a benevolent, protective type of mortician. He really felt like that, it was a pleasure for him to take the burden away from the family as much as possible.
Was there something about that early that you learned from him doing that? There's a certain honor that he took to be able to take care of.
He tried to teach me different lessons, but they didn't really work. Example, this is what you look like when you run in front of a dump truck, and this is what happens to you when you play with a gun, and on and on, those type of lessons. But I understood that death was part of life at a very early age, so I probably looked at death a little differently. I never really looked at it as being, it's not going to happen to me. It happens to everybody. So,
mm-hmm. But, and was his experience in the military, did it help you look at the military differently as well?
I don't know if it helped a whole lot, other than once we actually got into the field and actually started killing one another. But I think the biggest thing that helped me from him was just getting out in the mountains, camping and hunting and those type of things. So it was just a little easier for me than the average guy. I was already used to sleeping on the ground. I was already used to eating bad food, and humping with a pack on your back and all your gear. Mm-hmm. I think those things helped me as much as anything early on in my training, at least.
Well, tell me a bit about how your military career started. You started it in JROTC in high school?
I joined the National Guards on a lunchtime bet. Four of us walked across the street and joined the National Guards, and we were all 17. We all had to have our parents come in later and sign. But I was moving around trying to get on with life, and realized, I was trying to go to college and work at the same time. And I realized that the GI Bill would be a benefit. And not only that, I was being held to meetings every Wednesday night, So, here you are, young and free. I didn't want to be held down. So mm-hmm. I just decided to get it over with and join, get my 2 years out of the way. And that's basically what happened there. I tickled the idea of going in the Warrant Officer Flight Program, but I just couldn't see doing that many years.
You'd rather be an infantryman?
No. I really thought I wanted to be a medic, and I really thought they would make me a medic. Even after I got into infantry school, I still thought I could weasel my way out of it, you know.
Mhm.
And the only way I was going to be allowed to do that was to re-up and throw some added years there. So that's when I decided I was invulnerable. I guess I was probably going to live.
Well, definitely about the stories that,
to get me.
right, about the stories we're going to be coming up. I would assume coming out of that and thinking like, wow, I'm kind of invincible would be, you know, kind of the thought process. But you grew up in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon area, where you're at now.
Correct. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Oregon, Washington, California.
Mm-hmm.
You've reached 1-4.
So what did your dad think? Because he was a Marine. You
Right.
joined up in the National Guard.
What did he think?
What did he say to you?
Yeah, he wouldn't even talk to me. I was probably in Vietnam. It wasn't until I got out of sniper school that he even write me. So he thought I joined the Army just to piss him off.
Yeah. And your mom, you mentioned in the book that you both were, it was your best friend.
Yeah.
I mean, having been with your father, Marine, you know, a veteran of 2 big wars, how did she feel about you joining the National Guard?
She wasn't happy. She wasn't happy at all. You know, it was hard on her, no doubt about it. I write about it in the book where we're standing there in the Portland airport. She's crying and doesn't want to let go of me. It was real tough to pull her hands off of me and walk away from her, but it's what I had to do.
Why was she your best friend?
I was the oldest, and she went through, her and my father had on again, off again relationships. And so she needed me early on as far as helping with my brothers and sisters, and even income. I worked all the way through high school, and I always gave her my check, and I did a little bit back for doing something stupid now and again.
Would you say going active duty was something stupid?
It was once I realized. I remember looking at the picture of my family and just thinking, what are they going to go through if I get killed? And that was when I really thought, you know, why am I doing this to them? You know, when I didn't have to. You know, it wasn't like I got drafted. You know.
And you felt very prepared. You know, through your training, through the National Guard. You had mentioned that you couldn't talk about it unless you actually experienced it. So this was the opportunity.
That was a big part of why I went there. You know, the people I went to high school with are starting to develop opinions, and some are making decisions to be draft dodgers, others are making decisions to go in all the way, and others are just waiting to see what happens. But I just really felt like in order to voice my opinion, I needed to walk a mile in the infantryman's shoes or the soldier's shoes before I could be as opinionated as most people were being at that time.
And you get over to Vietnam. It doesn't take long for some big things to happen, but take me through those first couple days that you're there. Do you feel lost? Do you feel like a fish out of water? What's going through your head then?
Not really, because first few days you're pretty regimented. I mean, it's like they had the system down. You know, you go through one door and you glue it on this vehicle and this bus, and you go over here and you do this and that. It's really not until you're with your unit that you know, and you take one look at these guys that I realized I probably have made a big mistake.
These were the old timers you make mention of in the book.
Yeah. When they all came in off that mission, and they had just gotten their ass kicked too. I mean, they lost 5, I think, that day. And you know, it's just looking at those guys, and everybody was emaciated. We all lost weight down there in the Delta. You couldn't eat. You You know, we would eat maybe our average day, we would have a little can of like peaches or fruit cocktail and maybe a pound cake and some crackers. That'd be about it.
Mm-hmm.
So we did, I never did, but maybe a couple times take an actual full meal with me out in the field.
When did you find out?
You just couldn't keep it down.
Yeah. The heat just, it was crushing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When did you find out when you got over there that the Mekong Delta would be where you were operating?
Well, I originally had orders for 4th Infantry Division up in Pleiku, but they just put you wherever they thought they needed you at that point. You know, you just get in a bus and the next thing you know, you're in a Bearcat, which is where I ended up, 9th Infantry Division. So,
mm-hmm. And just to kind of round out the idea of what Mekong Delta was, what was strategically important about that particular region? I'm not a veteran, Todd, Ellie, we're not veterans, so a lot of this sort of comes around to like history.
Well, it was truly the breadbasket of the war. I mean, of the nation, of course, and then not only that, but the river system down the Delta. There's quite a few fingers to the Delta coming across the border, and they used it extensively for travel. They were masters at semi-submerging things, and you know, they knew how to work it. They knew how to hide it. The Navy did a pretty good job of stopping their boats, checking them, but they couldn't get it all. And you know, it just, all they had to do is get across the border. So we actually had people down there that we'd captured. It was their first day in South Vietnam. They came all the way down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, all the way down through, and came down the Mekong Delta, and we captured them. It was their first day.
One of the first things that happens to you, I mean, this seems to be within days of you landing. I'm going to share my screen here. 1 second. Here we are. You're on the Westchester.
Yes,
and you end up hitting a 50-gallon mine that VC scuba divers had brought out and attached to the side of the ship.
Correct. They had attached 2 of them, one on each side. Unfortunately, the det cord to the second one blew off. It detonated, or I wouldn't be here. It was only maybe 15, 20 feet from my head. The holes that it blew in the side of the Westchester was, I don't know, I'm guessing 40 feet by 40 feet. It immediately killed 20 some people, and then made quite a few people drown. It. I think there was 6 or 8 people died in the compartment that I was in.
And you guys were you're drenched in diesel fuel. You're stuck under your under deck, the lowest level, correct?
Yeah, we're in the very bottom, and what happened was the diesel tanks were ruptured, and they collapsed the wall in my berthing area, which pinned some of the guys to and they couldn't get out. But within 20 seconds, maybe less, the whole compartment was full of diesel oil, and we had a little air. You know, the air was compressed up above, so you had to, you know, dodge the pipes and so forth, and work your way over to the door, whatever they call it, the hatch. I don't know, and had to reach down, grab it, hold your breath, and then go up to the next level. Fortunately, most of us got through there, especially one man by the name of Larry Reed. I think he went back down 4 times. I don't know how the hell he even saw. You have diesel oil in your eyes. It's pretty rough. But,
and you guys were, I mean, you're covered in this for a day or two, it seemed. You were.
It was about 12 hours is what it was.
Okay.
It's about 3:30 in the afternoon. We're standing on the deck. We're all nude. A couple guys might have had underwear on. They didn't even issue us underwear at that point, because we wouldn't wear them out in the field anyhow. It's just an extra added parcel of clothing that would just accumulate more moisture. But I think I had a pair of socks on for some reason.
And this was
So
before your
anyhow,
first
yeah, we're
actual
standing
mission.
out there, and we're standing out there in the hot sun all day long until they finally got us off. I mean, we had light-haired guys. A redhead kid, I will always remember, his scrotum had blown up the size of a softball just from the sun beating down with all that diesel oil on him.
And this was before your actual first mission, like actually before you first even touched.
Exactly.
land.
Yeah, that was my first night with my men. Yeah.
What did you think after that? Oh boy.
First, I thought this was going to be a pretty good deal, being on a ship. But the bad thing about being on a ship was, of course, ships can blow up. But you actually spend more time out in the field than you do if you're in a unit that has a base camp.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have a base camp, about 1/4 of you have to stay behind and provide some sort of security. And you would take turns. So you get about 1/4 of your time you would have off. It didn't quite work out that way for us. So, they just brought us in mainly to try to help the ringworm and the immersion foot along and get us one a good night of sleep and a good meal, and then back at it we went.
You mentioned Sergeant Reed went back down below deck 4 times after the Westchester was hit. Was there something that stuck with you after that? As we get to the story that happened in April, that you're being considered for the Medal of Honor for, there's something about taking care of your men. Was there something about what Sergeant Reed did that stuck with you?
I don't know. No, probably not. Not at that stage. I was just in awe of his bravery. In fact, he was awarded the Soldier's Medal over that deal. I feel it should have actually been more like it was actually in combat in my mind. But anyhow, no, but once you become a squad leader and all that, it's just, they're your guys, and you got to watch out for them. I wasn't the best in the world. I didn't really have hardly any training as a leader, even though I was a squad leader and in my training. But yeah, you just, they're your guys, and you try to help them out the best you can, and you try to listen to them, of course.
Was it common? This is just a side question. Was it common for VC to be scuba divers? It sounds very advanced to me.
Blew me away when I found it out. I actually, a year late, when we went back in '94, they took us to a little museum, and they actually showed us a picture of the guys that had done that. So yeah, they had made up these 55-gallon drum barrels full of explosives and made them neutrally buoyant. And those guys swam them damn things all the way out to the boat, to the ship, hooked up deck cord over to the other one, and then ran the deck cord all the way, or a charging line of some sort anyhow, all the way back to the shore. Yeah, pretty crazy. No, it wasn't common at all, but they were very adept at swimming. We found them more than once floating down the river in piles of leaves, or just grass and leaves. Just looks like a bunch of junk floating down the river. They'd be underneath it, of course, breathing through it. Where there is a will, there is a way with those guys.
Do you remember your first mission?
Oh yeah. Of course.
What about it stuck out to you?
Well, just the whole thing. I mean, my first night I got freaked out because a rat was close to me. I thought it was actually a person. I could hear it crunching the leaves. But the very next night, anyhow, I had a chance to put a stop to an ambush, and for some reason or other, I thought it might be some of our men, and I did fire on them, and I allowed them to just lay into us with a tripod-mounted machine gun and rockets, and just by the grace of God, rounds went over my head, and they landed where nobody got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that changed me big time right there. I considered myself a coward at that point, and I just couldn't imagine going through life that way. So, a matter of hours, I had completely reversed who I was going to be. So.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing at the beginning of the book about sort of this crisis of conscience that you go through. Like, I just went through all this training. That's how I'm gonna die, is a coward. Like, and then, within a day or two, you obviously had a chance to redeem yourself, and you kind of went the other direction. The pendulum swung pretty far the other way.
Well, in fact, it was just later that afternoon. Mm-hmm. The next day, I was standing up, returning fire, when my squad leader, which happened to be Reed, decided I was being an idiot. So he tackled me. They gave me a stern talking to about exposing myself to that extent. But so there's a smart way to expose yourself and a dumb way, and anyhow. But yeah, it took me less than 24 hours to completely reverse the road I was going down. Mm-hmm. Not that I wasn't still afraid, and not that I didn't do things that, didn't stick my head up here and there. There were times I didn't want to stick my head inside that bunker, even though it was my job. But you just kind of got to do it, get it over with.
If you go onto Ed's website, I think it's Ellie will put that over into the chat. I believe it's edthesniper.com.
Yeah.
You can find many pictures I'll pull up here in the PowerPoint, but also a lot of different things that we'll get to. I thought I'd show off some of the photos that you put into your website if you wanted to chat about any of them.
Yeah, just a typical. It's a typical way of conducting business in the Mekong Delta. We probably went through 4 to 7 river crossings a day. So,
and every river crossing, you're talking leeches and, human waste that was in the river.
Yeah, there were leeches everywhere. You didn't have to get in the water to find leeches. I was one of the fortunate ones. They didn't like me very well, so.
That Oregon blood.
Evidently. Either that or it was bad beer.
Probably the bad beer. I would agree.
Just some typical dense foliage down the Delta.
Now, I've heard tell the foliage was so bad you couldn't really get through it. How did you experience it?
Yeah, true. Some of it was that way. And if you in that picture, if you look right in the very center of it, you'll see 2 men standing there. Right there. Yeah. But it's just, it varied considerably down in the Delta. You had large rice paddies, and you had meandering rivers everywhere. You had coconut groves, tangerine groves, things like that.
When they would send you out and say, okay, you guys are humping it for 2 or 3 days, you mentioned in the book, like we're on a hiking trip to nowhere. What was the point? What was the goal? Like, get out there and just drum up VC and take them out if you find them?
Yeah, that's your job. You're an infantryman. That's your job. Your job is to knock it on, kick the doors in. It's just a big hunting trip. That's what it amounts to, You're out there hunting, and you aren't going to do a very good job of hunting by just sitting on your butt. So, of course, they will find you.
And as they did, you get a little bit further into the chapters here, and you talk about your first kill and what happened there.
Yeah.
And they found you guys, or actually you found them. You sort of spotted them before they opened up.
That was the advantage of staying on the move, is that you had as good a chance of walking in on them as they did you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I walked right into the back of us guys. They had a Loach Hughes 500 right in their sights. I mean, to this day, I'm just amazed he wasn't shooting. Other than maybe it was so straight right up above him, maybe he's trying to wait for it to get a little further away before he knocked it down. But so that was a very rewarding kill, and that more than likely I saved a couple lives, and it also meant that to the other men that I was one of them. It's kind of like
talk
like
about that a little bit.
It's like being on a football team or anything else. You make that nice run around the end, you're going to get a pat on the back.
What did it mean to be a part of them? Like, you had felt this sort of like, I'm a coward. How the heck did I not open up on these guys that were going to ambush us to this? How did your view change of the unit at that point?
Well, your soul survival is all about the men around you.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize that if you get hurt, who's going to come and help you? If you're somebody that you don't dislike, and if you're not part of the team, they're probably not going to try very hard to come and get you. That just kind of a natural reaction, I think. So that's why we all kiss the ass of our medics. Medics were loved by everybody for that reason alone.
Did you ever have regrets that you didn't become a medic?
Well, not now, of course, but I was kind of the second medic in my platoon. When we get more than one wounded, I'd help my medic do a little triage, and I'd try to mend or tend to people that weren't hurt all that bad. So Doc could spend his time with the ones that were a little more acute.
Where was this picture taken?
That's on the side of our ship. Our ship would have these pontoons, and then to those pontoons would be our gear. You see the little, on the left-hand side, you'll see a shack there. That's where we kept our weapons. And then, of course, you could see how the river boats, how they would tie up to the pontoon. So that's how we would load up, and that's how we would disembark also. So
these pontoons up here at the top?
Those are all boats.
Okay.
We're standing on
You're talking here.
down below. The big pontoons right there, yeah.
I see.
Yeah. Interesting deal. We're called the Mobile River Reinforce. And there was only one brigade of us in all of Vietnam that functioned that way. And really there's only 2 battalions out of that brigade that functioned that way totally. But another one of them actually had a base camp on land.
And so you had several, just like when you were young, you had a lot of different jobs, going from radio operator, grenadier, sergeant, platoon leader. At what point did you decide to go to sniper school?
Oh, a strange deal. Or just a flyer came out. I just saw a flyer, and so I went to my CO and told him I was interested in it. And next thing I know, somebody came to me and said, "Hey, you need to go over to the Benoit, which was where our colonel stayed, which was where our headquarters, what they called home." So I went over there about 4 a.m. and caught a ride and ended up in a place called Bearcat, which was the original base camp of the 9th Infantry Division. We had actually moved down into the Delta pretty complete by then, but they kept the sniper school up there because that's where it was made. They hadn't made the new one yet. They had made a new range yet down below. So we all went up and lived with the Black Panther Division of the Thai Army. They had taken that place over at that time. So
What was that like?
yeah, they're a bunch of great guys. It was all interesting, you know. I didn't necessarily get into their food at that time. They one thing about it though, they kept the rat population down. So.
And did you pass sniper school the first time?
No, I flunked.
Why?
I was the first guy to actually flunk. What they would do is they'd bring in about 35, 40 of you, and then they would wash everybody out but 10. They wanted to keep 10 people. And then you would finish your training that way. And then at the very end, you would have a test. And the 900-meter target eluded me that day. So you had to hit it's an 18-inch wide target. You had to hit it 3 out of 5 times. And I hit it 2 out of 5. The wind wasn't called correctly, you know, so I can kind of maybe blame somebody else for that. But anyhow, so I went back to my unit, and but I took what I learned there, and I put a starlight scope on my M16, zeroed it in, and started using it. And oddly enough, these guys were calling my kills in as though I was a sniper. And they would go into the sniper school, and these guys would write it down. Ed Eaton, he got another kill. He got another kill. Without them even realizing I wasn't a sniper, at least. So I would hang out with those guys. So I went back once they got moved to Dong Tam. I hung out with them quite a bit. They approached me one day about going back and requalifying. So
you were able to
do
do
it.
it.
At a stage then that I really wanted the hell out of straight leg infantry. I was ready for something different.
Taking a step back, what can you tell me about the starlight scope?
Well, it's really your first night scope that was worth a damn. You still had to have some residual starlight or moonlight and what have you in order for it to work well. But I mean, you could see things 50 feet away from you that you couldn't see 5 feet away, you know. Sometimes you could see things 400 or 500 meters away that you couldn't see 40 or 50 meters away, you know. So it was highly effective. And it was meant, it had a reticle on it. So it was meant for to be put on a weapon.
For our viewer or our audience tonight, Ed appeared with Gunny on Gunny Time. It's on YouTube. You can check it out. Shooting with one of these. Do you think the starlight scope was too heavy for the M16, or was that something that anybody else had tried? You're just like, I'm just going to do this and see what happens.
No, I was just nobody had been trained how to do it, to be honest with you. And then the second problem was finding a mount. The mounts were hard to find. So, but you know, it just was one of those things that they just came out with it, and they would send it to every unit, and every squad I think had one. They had plenty of them, but none of us had ever taken 1 minute of training. You know, it was all by experimental. So that was one of the fortunate things about sniper school, was they would train you how to use the thing properly.
Mike, you might have, I pulled that up really quick. So that was, I was hoping just to show a picture of what the starlight scope looked like, but that was actually mounted on an M14, you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Right, what's that? So did you feel like after that point, your lethality sort of took a big step forward just within your group of guys?
Yeah, yeah, and the nice thing about that was, as we would take shifts, the guy coming on, he would use my rifle and my starlight scope. So, that position had a starlight scope all night long. And not that a lot of positions didn't, but they weren't worth anything other than you can just see them coming or moving, and then guess by golly which way you're shooting, if you're going to hit anything or not.
I want to get to the event that happened in April, the battle that you're being recommended for the Medal of Honor for. Was there ever a point up to that particular incident that you felt like you were in deeper doo-doo than what you ended up in?
Oh, absolutely. And that is actually very common for us. We figured out later on there's something like 290% casualties in our unit. So you had a real good chance of getting 3 Purple Hearts as I did. Unfortunately, we had guys that got 1 Purple Heart, and that was the end of them. But we had a lot of casualties, and you really feel like you're just not going to make it after a while.
How long were you there before the events that happened in April?
How long had I been in country?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. About 6 months, I guess. Yeah.
So 6 months, you're about halfway through.
Yeah.
You've already survived on the Westchester.
Right.
Ambushes, battles, kicking doors in. Let's talk about that. April 3rd, 1969. You volunteered to go on a mission.
Yeah, and I'd volunteered for a few of those. I don't really know why. This one in particular, I didn't want to go on, but I saw that we had a bunch of new guys that usually when we go on those, it'd be like squad leaders, it'd be guys that had some experience. And we had some guys that they just hadn't been in country very long. And a couple of the guys were just saying, "Hey, Ed, we really need you. You need to come along." So my captain, Captain Perkins, and I both managed the team. He had 1 helicopter load, and I had the other. And it was there had been quite a bit of radio transmissions coming from that area, which of course is a sign of a headquarters or somebody that has something to do with what's going on. So that was our purpose for jumping in on that. And unlike us SEALs, they're special forces. Those guys, they might practice their mission for days or hours. We just spur of the moment, grab your gear, let's go kind of deal. So no maps, all you had was some radio frequencies and off you went. So, but it's kind of a complicated story because one thing turns into another, but
it certainly escalates very quickly. And, even just the dust offs and then sort of what transpires, but sort of take me through the intensity of just when you first got there.
Well, when we first got there, we're just checking out hooches, we're just trying to, but it was so muddy and it was such a quagmire of, we had like a good foot or so of mud, and another foot or so of water. But we weren't able to really check everything out that we wanted to. And
how many guys did you have?
Oh, I don't know. I'm thinking about 6 or 8 on each team as well. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, we had to leave without having control of everything. And as we were leaving, one of the guys jumped off, and it just, make a long story short, we got our ass shot down.
So the helicopter, one helicopter is able to evac, the other one has to come back for the guy who jumped.
Right. So anyhow, there we were laying on a helicopter on site, and it beat the hell out of us. I was stuck underneath for a little while.
So
Captain Perkins I ended up on his bird with him on the way out, but he was stuck underneath that helicopter for quite a while.
So as
broke his pelvis.
Sorry to interrupt. As it was shot down, it pulled straight up in the air. Is that right? And then came down.
No. It rotated from left to right. The nose did go up, but anyhow, it started rolling. Is what happened. So I think it hit the ground upside down when it first hit the ground.
And everybody's beat up, as you said.
It threw weapons and bodies out, and now you got water and mud. You can't find anything. So just wasn't that many weapons, and got everybody out of the helicopter and got on top of it. Tried to get the M60 to working, but it was launched, and it didn't much matter anyhow. All the ammunition from it had flown away. So
at this point, you've kind of survived just barely a helicopter crash. You're surrounded by VC or VCs in the vicinity, very close.
Mm-hmm.
And you were able to get yourself up on top of the downed helicopter to the main gun.
Correct. Yeah. And anyhow, I couldn't get it working, and there's some activity down below. There's a few guys walking that weren't hurt as bad as the others, and anyhow, one of them, and I believe he was a door gunner. He threw he found my sniper rifle. So by this time, I had an M14 with Starlight scope, and he threw it up, and that gave me the ability to see more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the rifle itself, the stock was split, and the mount for the scope was twisted, so I'm not hitting anything I'm shooting at first, anyhow. So then I would look through the scope and burn up a magazine, and then he'd throw me up a M16 with a fresh magazine, and I would burn it up, throw it back to him, and went back and forth that way for quite a while. And then finally, I was able to see a splash of water from one of my rounds through the M14, and I then knew where my round was going. So through basic Kentucky windage, I was able to become effective.
Can you explain Kentucky windage to me? I heard that term and wasn't quite sure what it meant.
Well, it's really nothing more. Let's say you're aiming at a target and bullseye, but the round's hitting at the very bottom of the target. So you just would raise your point of aim to be that much higher, going for the impact to be where you want it to be. Mm-hmm. Or it could be up and left or down and right, whatever it is,
So less about windage and more about angle of shot.
Right. Yeah. Same thing happens with wind. You can shoot at a target and the wind will take the round someplace different every time. Mm-hmm. And so you just move for your point of aim. You move it, and same principle.
Ed, what was going through your mind at this point? Was anything going through your mind, or were you just taking command?
Yeah, I'm just trying to live. Yeah, I just, at that point, you're really not thinking about a whole lot. I do remember once, though, thinking that the wood line wasn't that far away. I might actually be able to get to the wood line behind me, but that would have meant disengaging, and there'd have been a lot of people who had been screwed had I not kept them at bay for a little while at least. So,
were the VC returning fire? What was that level of intensity?
Yeah, they were. In fact, I got a piece of shrapnel in my chin. from them. But yeah, the intensity was sporadic. They got smart right off the bat and quit using tracers because they, I could follow them in. But yeah, I don't know how many there was or whatever. There are a couple other people have different ideas on that. I'm just going back and forth, trying to find targets.
Yeah, I'd have to say it'd be really just even surviving the helicopter going down, like how do you reassess what's going on at that point? It would seem very
well, you're
chaotic.
just hoping that somebody comes back to your rescue, See, part of the problem was we'd actually left that area. We had probably gained, I don't know, 1,000-foot elevation already. My colonel, he took his bird. He's going back to his ship, and we had 2 Cobras with us. They're going back to their landing area, their home. And that's when we realized we were missing a man and that we had to go back. So communications wise, those guys didn't really know what was going on. But so I was just hoping to hell they figured it out sooner than later. But, so yeah, it just is what it was. So they came in and took 2 birds to pick the rest of the guys up. And then there wasn't any room for me. So I stayed behind, and then a Cobra, a Huey Cobra, the Cobras came back. And I rode on the outside of a Huey Cobra. He took me to somewhere, I have no idea where. He dumped me off in the middle of another rice paddy.
At one point during this, you decided to stay with Mike Perkins as he was injured.
Right. Uh-huh.
What can you tell me about your friendship with Mike at that point?
Well, Mike and I had, he was a special forces guy anyhow. So he looked at operations a little bit differently than a straight leg infantryman. But him and I had went outside our perimeter once before, actually a couple times before, but one in particular, and we broke up a prisoner of war scenario. I think I shot one person, and anyhow, we got the hell out of it. We created more confusion than anything. Unfortunately, they were shooting at each other instead of us, and so they were all Vietnamese prisoners. They were all ex-VCs, in fact, that the VC had made prisoners. So for various reasons. One of them said it was because he was fooling with his captain's wife. I don't know. But anyhow, so he knew that I had a starlight scope, and he liked sneaking around at night. So
the special operations guys, they're a special breed.
yeah. But Mike was a good guy. I just liked the way he functioned and way he treated everybody.
So at this point in the battle, you've been on top of the helicopter. You're suppressing. You're making sure that they're not overrunning your position. Once the dust off happens, you decide to stay back with Mike. At that point, did anything cross your mind like this is it? Or
oh, sure, yeah. I mean, I was down to hardly anything when it came to ammunition and all that, but I thought it was just Mike and I. But come to find out later, when it's anyhow, so the next bird comes and we carry Mike off to it. And there's another man or two still behind the helicopter back there hiding, but. So get everybody out anyhow, but there's really no room for me weight-wise to get on the bird. So I stayed behind, and actually my colonel's Tiger Scout, his interpreter, stayed behind with me. The 2 of us stayed behind, and a Cobra came in, and we jumped on the skids of of the Cobra. Then the Cobra took us to a rice paddy and dumped us off. And a little bit later, a dust off came in and picked us up. So.
And what you came to find out is that you actually had sustained somewhat of a broken back at the beginning of when the helicopter had first crashed.
Right. Yeah. I had broken 3 vertebrae. Yeah. Still paying for that today, of course. But that, strapped in the wound and actually got shot in the finger. And oddly enough, a couple of years ago, we've kind of figured out I probably broke my neck. my neck had been askew for quite a few years, according to the surgeon. So that was the only damage to my neck that I recall in my life of any severity.
Do you recall feeling any of that pain during that whole ordeal?
No, you don't feel no pain. You're so full of adrenaline, But by the time when it was time for me to get off the Cobra, I couldn't walk. I had stoved up.
Was that how you reacted to that whole experience? Was that kind of what you had thought about way back day one when you didn't stop the ambush? It was I'm going to do everything I can from this point on.
Well, yeah, we all want to survive.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of a given. People have different ideas of what's required of them or what's expected of them. I understand it. I had one of my men that never shot around, and we've figured that out. And we're talking about and we're low on men already. So I designated him as the mule, and I just loaded him up with everything I could put on his back. And that man never complained. He never complained. He never even missed a mission. He showed up all the time. He didn't have the guts to stick his head up during a firefight. We all knew it. We knew where to put him at night. We didn't put him in a position, where,
Mm-hmm.
But, he still had something to offer, is my whole point.
When did you find out later that you were being considered for the Medal of Honor for your bravery that night?
Oh, I don't know. It's been 20 years ago, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't have computers. We didn't know where everybody was. Being able to find one another, it really happened. Perkins and I found one another, and he knew I hadn't got the Medal of Honor because he'd looked it up. So he figured that I probably got the Distinguished Service Cross. And when he found out that I had got nothing, that's when he started dredging things up. So which led to some confusion. So he just put me in for a medal through the Army, figuring the Army would investigate it. He didn't have any way to investigate it, to come up with people and And so the Army, they just says, well, here's a medal, And
at
so
this
then
point,
as
as
time goes by, and we find one another, and we find witnesses and so forth. That's when he decided that it should be, of Medal of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, is what it is.
And hopefully that does come through. And I recommend your book to everybody here to check it out. We were talking before we started tonight about your candor in the book and how much we appreciated it. And even in the stories about coming home. And Thursday nights, we've been doing a writers panel talking about how writing has been able to help so many veterans heal. And we asked that question in the green room, but I would like to ask it now as well with our audience here is, how did writing your book the Mekong Mud Dogs. How did that help you heal and process your tour?
So partly because the way I did it is I recruited some guys that I served with, one sniper, and the rest of them were pretty much with Bravo Company. But so you're back in touch. You're talking about those things, you know. Did this happen before that, or you know, da da da. And, you know, you can be 10 feet from a guy and you can see something completely different, of course. Mm-hmm. But you know, just a lot of talking about it and laughing about how lucky we were, and you know, how stupid we were at times, and this and that. But
had you already been writing up?
I would recommend it to anybody. You know, you can always lay the pen down, quit writing. You know, it's not a big deal.
Had you already been writing up until that point when you really started reconnecting with everyone?
I actually started writing about Vietnam within a year after coming home, and I just kind of couldn't do it. But what I did do is I saved all my letters and I saved all my pictures, and that's what made it real easy for me to keep a timeline and remember each story, you know, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. There's still some things I've put out of my mind. I found out there's some things that I was there and part of, and I'm going, oh, no, that didn't happen. And yeah, you guys are full of shit. That didn't happen. And they turn right next to me and go, Ed, you're right there. You're right next to me. You know? So I still have, I blocked some of it out, evidently. But.
Mm-hmm. As you were writing the book and you were able to finish it, how did you feel about it as you were completing it? Do you feel like it was the story told as well as you could tell it?
Well, I just wanted the truth to be out there. Like I said before, I'd already been written about 5 different books and about 5 different magazines. And I just, little things. I mean, they weren't, sometimes they just get something turned around, but and sometimes it was embarrassing. You know, one lining in the book, Inside the Crosshairs, he wrote that my average kill was above 600 meters. Well, that's shit. Anybody, the sniper knows better than that. I told him that they were, I think I told him they were under 400 or whatever. He got it turned around anyhow. Mm-hmm. But those are embarrassing things when it comes to other snipers. A lot of people believe what is written. The written word is gospel, you know. Mm-hmm. So that was my main reason for really wanting to write that to the Hollywood guy, and,
just to make sure to get the story right.
Right. Didn't do me any good anyhow, because I said the first manuscript I read of his was pretty Hollywood, you know. Whatever.
I want to show.
He's out of the pit. He's out of the picture now. I got a completely different director and producer into it at this point.
And you said before we started the program that you may be hearing about those movie rights within the next month or so.
Oh, I'm just saying that it's due for renewal.
Okay.
So, and it's at the point now where they're going to have to do something. So, they've just been paying to keep it alive year by year at this point. Mm-hmm. So we'll see.
We were also talking before the program, just you sort of have that creative bent, be able to write about this, you know, soon after being in Vietnam, but also looking at your website. I want to pull up, and hopefully Anthony, you're still with us here. So I want to pull up the art that you've done. I'm going to share my screen here with everyone. This is on Ed's website. And if you're like me, I popped over here and wasn't quite sure what to expect, and started scrolling through and was like really blown away by your art here, Ed. And I wonder, in the same way that the writing sort of can help you heal, do you feel like the art has also done that for you?
Oh, I don't know that I can relate to art and helping me out with things like PTSD or anything like that, but I enjoy it. It gives my mind off of something. But my biggest problem with my art is I don't stay with any one thing, and I just go to under the night. Well, I want to let's try something this way. I'm going to try it that way. Oh, I wonder what this would look like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never really stayed with one thing to master it, you know. It's just always been. So a lot of those things that I had to do 4 or 5 of them before one would turn out all right. But you know, a bunch of crazy stuff. Some people seem to like it, you know. At least I sell enough to take my wife out to dinner once in a while.
That's a good thing. Where can you purchase your art?
I think actually right on my website there's a link right there. Yeah.
And one thing that we didn't really get into is when you came home, and you know, you sort of left, you know, you would join the National Guard, you went active duty, you wanted to be able to talk about this. And I can't talk about it unless I really experience it. Did you talk about it when you came back?
I did. But you have to understand, I was one of the lucky guys. There's a couple, 3 types that don't talk about it. There's the type that was so traumatic that they don't want to do it. Others, if I don't talk about it, it's usually because you're not going to relate to it anyhow, so why bother? And then you got a big percentage of people who won't talk about it because there's nothing to talk about. But I'm just real lucky that I never had anybody come up to me later on in the years and say, you know, Ed, if you had had us do this instead of that, so and so would be alive. Or you know, I didn't have anybody blame me for losing a leg or a life. You know, so that was a big thing. But what really started it was I'm sitting in a bar, and every Friday night they'd come on and they would tell you how many people were killed and wounded in Vietnam that week. And somebody wanted the TV turned off, and I jumped up on the bar and told them they were going to have to come through me first. I just felt like it should have been talked about a whole lot more instead of hidden.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that was part of it. But still, even at that, let's just take April 3rd, for example. I attempted to tell that story to a couple friends one night. They just, come on, man. You know, I could tell they weren't believing it. Like, why bother? So, yeah.
When you come around to every April 3rd, what do you do to sort of recall that event? Do you
I thank my
honor
lucky
it?
stars. You know, I used to go out and celebrate. That date and the date I got out of the Army, the 2 dates I used to celebrate. So,
How long did you stay in?
Not long at all. I pretty well busted up, and I had less than 150 days to serve when I got out of Vietnam. And so I got what was called an early out. So active duty time was less than 2 years, actually. But there was 65 to 69 if you want to count. National Guard.
What was it like seeing your mom when you got back?
It was pretty rewarding. Yeah. See, it was pretty cool. You know, I just her knowing that I was home. You know, giving her that first call when you get off the plane.
Mhm. And what about your old man? You get back?
Oh yeah, we started talking. We were talking to each other by then, anyhow. But,
Mhm. Did you feel like the experiences that you had in Vietnam, suddenly you kind of understood him more?
I did, because there's just no doubt in my mind that he suffered from PTSD. PTSD, whatever, however you pronounce that shit. He had some real problems drinking and with anger management. He loved barroom balls. He loved knocking somebody on their ass. Kind of an oxymoron, you know. He'd full day as a mortician in his suit and tie, and then he'd go to a local bar and kick somebody's ass. Pretty crazy.
I want to open it up to the room here too. If anybody has any questions for Ed, they're welcome to ask it here. Also, I want to say hi to Henry. Henry's one of our young guns who comes on every week. Henry's here. It seems like Henry has your autograph, Ed.
Oh, really?
Henry
Oh,
is
very
an
cool.
autograph collector. Henry, you want to tell me that story?
Oh yeah, Don Nemchek. He's a friend of mine. He was giving me suggestions of people to write to, and one of them was a sniper, and it gave me the idea to contact like some snipers and stuff. So I found out about Ed, and he sent me his autograph. So thank you.
Hey, my pleasure, young man. I
Thanks,
always feel honored when somebody asks. I probably get a request once a week.
Mhm. Don, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I did. I just want to welcome Ed to the VBC. I looked at his website today and watched a couple of YouTube videos, and I was compelled to buy the book. So, Ed, I'm looking forward to reading the saga of your exploits back in the day. I just have to ask you a quick question. I got a buddy out in Coos Bay, Oregon, and we served together. We're battle buddies, and I told him about your story, and I was just curious if you could share with me what part of Oregon or the Northwest Pacific are you located? My buddy wants to reach out to you.
Yeah, I get down through Coos Bay now and again. I'm in the north coast, quite a ways from Coos Bay, actually.
Okay.
Coos Bay is a good 4-hour drive, I believe, south of me.
Okay.
So
Okay. I gave him your email as well. So his name's Mark Prince. He's a gunsmith. He's real interested in the weaponry that you use and just having a conversation with you. He's a pretty good dude. So just give you a heads up on it. And thank you again, Ed, for sharing your story with us this evening.
Hey, absolutely my pleasure.
Indeed. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, Don. Thank you. Ed, were you able to go back to hunting, back to life when you came back?
Oh, that's kind of that story. Elk season started right after I got home, and my mother had saved all the money up that I'd sent her, and she was doing better in life. She didn't need my money any longer, so she actually saved it for me. But she also bought me a 300 Win mag. So I was all excited. I took it out. I got it zeroed in. I'm ready, and I didn't walk 100 yards in the woods, and I realized I wasn't hunting for deer any longer. I was looking for booby traps or elk. I was looking for booby traps, looking for ambush positions. I turned around, went back to the cabin, stayed there during the whole elk season. I didn't rifle hunt for quite a few years. I did. What got me back in the woods though was bow hunting. So, and bow hunting and mushroom hunting. I really love the mountains. But yeah, it took me a while. Mainly, it wasn't like I was seeing anything. I just was. But here I am noticing where a good ambush would be, and just things like that.
I feel like that'd be understandable after your deals that you were going through day in and day out, and just coming back, and even if you're in the peaceful Pacific Northwest, you're going to be on high alert. But as we were talking before the program, there was a recent headline of, I believe it was a Marine back from Afghanistan. He's at the 7-Eleven. You could look this up. It's a recent headline. He's standing there. Two gentlemen walk in to rob the place. They have it on camera, on 7-Eleven's camera. He turns around, grabs the gun out of the guy's hand and punches him in the face without even a, not even a thought. So something that, he's gone
I love
through.
that guy. I want to shake his hand.
Yeah. Do you have another book in you?
Actually, there's going to be some revisions to it. And just little things, some additional stories that came about and a change of names, things like that, I found out later. And then not only that, but Amazon's allowing hard copy now through them. I just didn't want to go through the hassle of the whole hardcover thing and then through Amazon. But now that you can do it through them, I'll be doing that. So I'm guessing maybe next summer I'll have it out.
What was your biggest takeaway from your time in service?
The ugliness of mankind, I think. The true brutality of war. And that goes right along with the naivety of the average person, the average, especially American, the naivety of war. We just don't get it. We don't get how ugly it is.
Mm-hmm.
We don't.
Okay, Ed, I'm sorry to chime in. This is Todd. I've been really good about zipping it up till now. And let's see, I want to ask you a really tough question. I have just listened and talking to veterans for so long, ones especially who've seen combat. They describe being naive, just like we are, just like you are before you go off to war. Then you go to war and discover this horrible, ugly, brutal truth about humanity. And then you come home, and my sense is that exposure to that brutal truth has probably the potential to destroy you. But if you get through it, are you able to see kind of the beauty of humanity in a new way? That's an odd question.
Well, not really. I've tell you the truth, I've analyzed what makes different people tick myself, because I go to my reunions and all that. I mean, and some guys are this way and other guys that way, and when hell, we're all right there in the same squad, for example. I think that a big part of PTSD for me was the realization that I, as mankind, I'm not that good. I'm not, there's nothing, there's really, it's pretty pitiful who we are, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I think that lowers your self-esteem in general. That being said, there's obviously bright spots in there. So, I think a guy just has to choose those things and run with them best he can. But yeah, there's a lot of great things that actually happened because of war. How to deal with car wrecks a little better, gunshots a little better, things like that. But
Henry Shepke has a question. Henry, would you mind asking it?
Yeah, I was curious, since you're like a Vietnam War veteran, what was your reaction or thoughts when you were listening to the news about the ending and the removal of all the U.S. forces during the Afghanistan war? What was your reaction about?
You don't even want to get me going there. I was pretty hypered up about that whole deal. That's just sick and pitiful way to end something. There are so many different ways we could have done it. We needed to get out of there, I'll admit. We didn't need to be doing it that way. I'd love to kick the person right in the nuts that's responsible for it. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, come on, Ed. You sugarcoat it too much. Hey, we have one of your high school classmates with us, Larry Wing. Larry, what was that like in high school?
He was amazing. Active, very active guy, and did love to hunt. I did know that, and he had a great following, and he was among the rowdies, I must say. I really, in a way, I envy him, but then again, I see, yeah, his pain. I do feel it. And as far as Afghanistan, I couldn't agree with him more. It brings out that Vietnam and Afghanistan seems to have evolved politically in the wrong direction far too early in the whole process.
You're right, Larry. Yeah.
The French knew it.
Yeah.
The British. And I just feel like before we go wading in again and letting the politicians lead us in that direction, more has to be done to prevent it.
Yeah.
War is not a solution. It's not.
You know, what made me sick more than anything is I used to try to say, well, the good thing about Vietnam is we learned a lesson that we'll probably never repeat. How sadly wrong was I?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. I feel the same way, Ed. I feel the same way. I think I'm stunned at how short our memories are.
Yeah.
The lesson was so obvious, and there we go, stumbling into it one more time. Okay. No more sermonizing.
Is it time for football yet?
You're in Oregon. There's no one to cheer for over there.
Actually, my teams are about ready to lose me anyhow. About had it with them.
Yeah. Well, Ed,
it's great to see you. We were down the coast yesterday during the storm. It was great. Big storm. Anyway, you take care. It's good to see you.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for doing this. I
Hey,
appreciate
Larry.
it very much.
Larry, give that beautiful wife of yours a hug for me.
I will. She's right here.
Hi, Ed. Love you. So proud of you.
Love you, Linda.
Also
Be
a classmate.
well, Ed, I want to thank you for coming on the program, talking about your story and your book, Mekong Mud Dogs. You can get that through the link that we will have here in the chat on Amazon, also on your website. I ask everyone here to look Ed up. You can find out a lot of the stuff that we've talked about tonight, all the stories that have been written, also the videos that are out there. They do some very good documentaries that you can check out about the story of on April 3rd. April 3rd, April 6th. April 3rd. April 3rd. I don't know why I thought 6th. It's my brother's birthday. That's why. April 3rd.
Yeah, you can go to my website, go to films, and see, History Channel did one on me, and then the NRA did another one on me. So there's actually 2 videos on that particular night. So, but one has the ending and the other one doesn't. So
edthesniper.com, and you'll see some great art.
Yeah.
Somebody already stole eaton.com. So.
Yeah.
So hey, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you having me on, and thank you for what you do. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Ed. Take care.
You, Ed.
Agreed.
Take care, everyone.
Larry.